Welcome to Pellowe Talk. My name's Dave Pellowe, and we're having bold, fearless conversations about the truth. And tonight we're going to talk about the movie that's soon to be released in Australia. And if you're wanting the details are it will definitely be released in Australia. Exactly where and when is still being organised. Joining me on stage are Lorraine and Gabriel Varela. Thank you very much for coming to Australia.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, David.
So Lorraine and Gabriel were actually credited, along with three others, in the movie credits for the movie Unplanned because they were on the ministry team. And this, we believe, is the first movie ever made, and I think this is really significant, the first movie ever made where they had pastors as part of the budget to actually make sure that the movie was made in a way that was God-honouring and sensitive to his leading, and just also covering the entire project in prayer. Now, I've seen the movie a couple of times, and I think mission accomplished. I think that was really, really well done.
Well, all glory to God.
Definitely. So tell me, how early were you guys involved with the project?
We first met our directors, Carrie Solomon and Chuck Conselman, at a writers' conference at Bethel Church in Reading in June of 2015. But it was after the Trump election, right before that, the Lord spoke to Carrie and Chuck and told them that this movie Unplanned was ready to go into production, and they needed to stop everything they were doing and put it into production. So it was at that time that they contacted us, and I remember the phone call saying, "Hi Lorraine, this is Carrie. Is Gabriel a pastor?" I'm like, "Why does that matter? I don't know, but yes." And so it was from that point on that we were invited to be the pastors for their organization, Believe Entertainment, to come on set as pastors for Unplanned. And so we started praying in anticipation of that 6 months before filming ever started.
Wow, so a good foundation.
Very good foundation.
Yeah. So we've got a petition on change.org, and already there's over 10,000 people that have signed it saying that they want to see this movie in Australia. And that's to show some goodwill, I guess, some market support for potential distributors. But we've also got a Facebook group, Unplanned Australia, which is run by you guys, you in particular, Lorraine, and that's basically keeping everybody in the loop. So one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we all go and see the movie in the cinemas when it comes out. Why?
Because it has the power to change culture. And one of the things that we've noticed as we've come to Australia on this, our very first visit, is that there's some areas of culture that need to be impacted, specifically around the issues of life and removing that label of taboo over abortion, specifically that label in the church that needs to be lifted so that shame can come off and women and men can be healed from the tragedy that they've experienced.
Gabriel, why does it matter if people see it in the cinemas as opposed to seeing it at home?
Well, a couple of things. This movie is also being sold by investors, people of faith that have put money into this project. And so we want to be good stewards of what God has given us and also bring back that investment to them, not just to the kingdom, but also to them. And so it's important to go to the theaters. It's important to support that before we move to different or other streams for the film to get out. So we encourage people to go to the theaters as soon as it's available.
You were going to say something?
Well, I just want to say, too, if you have a movie in a theater, it gives it credibility. Your neighbor is going to be more likely to want to go to the movie or see it later on if they know, oh, this is actually a theatrical release. And yes, what Gabriel was saying is so true, is that it takes investment to make movies of quality like this.
Right.
And if we want to see more films that have these life-changing messages, we need to be first adapters going into the theaters when the movie comes out. If we wait and say, oh, well, we'll see it next week or we'll see it's just that actually kills a movie. And so we need people to go in as soon as the movie comes out if you want to see it have any chance for life and a continual life afterwards.
Yeah. Look, a point I would want to make right here is people of the, I guess, conservative persuasion, sometimes right of centre, bemoan the fact that there's been this long march through the institutions where agendas we don't like, we'd almost say opposite agendas, have invaded our universities, invaded our institutions, and invaded Hollywood to saturate culture with their propaganda, with the message that markets cheapness of life, cheapness of marriage, cheapness of gender and sexuality, and all the good things that God designed. And so if we want those institutions to be taken back, which we do, and we're always saying, how do we get the universities back? How do we get Hollywood back? This has got to be an easy way. It's like, well, when the movie's made, part with your money, invest in it, because what Hollywood and all the, let me say, leftists, the extreme, communist kind of people have is lots and lots of money. And sometimes on the right, on the conservative side, this isn't a partisan movie. This is just a truthful movie. But if you are partisan and you bemoan the fact that the right seems to be unrepresented in mainstream media, Hollywood and academia, let's put our money where our mouth is and go 2 or 3 times and take a dozen people every time.
Yeah.
Can I just make a statement about that? You mentioned 2 key things. I remember one is that you said that the left is very adept at making films of propaganda, right?
Right.
How many of you have heard that Google labeled Unplanned as a film of propaganda? They actually called it a drama/propaganda. It's the first time that we know of in Google history that they ever categorized a film as propaganda. Hitler's movies from the 1940s and 30s were not considered propaganda. That was history. But Unplanned was considered propaganda until we raised, a flag and said, wait a minute, what are you doing? And they finally changed it and took it down.
Great.
Yeah, and the media in the United States has been against this movie from the very beginning. The big companies, Netflix and Google, they really don't want this movie. And listen, the enemy is using Hollywood to destroy our culture, to destroy our kids with the stuff that is coming out. So we are here ambassadors and culture changers, if I may say so. We want to be able to get into Hollywood and make quality films, right, with God at the beginning and the forefront of what we need to do, and combat what is coming out of Hollywood worldwide, because whatever the United States does, whatever Hollywood does, it gets all over the planet. We know that.
Yeah. Let's talk about Ashley Bratcher for a second, and to move into talking about her. I'm aware that the directors, when they cast her and essentially recruited her for the role, said, be very careful when you take this role, because you will never work in Hollywood again. Once you associate yourself, align yourself with this type of message, you'll be stereotyped and essentially black banned. It'll be, you'll never work in Hollywood again. So tell me about how they eventually cast Ashley Bratcher, who plays Abby Johnson.
Well, first of all, I want to say if you follow Ashley Bratcher or Abby Johnson on Facebook, you'll see that she has not been blacklisted. She actually has a leading role in the next movie that she's filming right now, so she's all good.
Very good.
But the directors had been telling that to the actresses that they had auditioned for this role just to prepare them, that there would be some backlash. In fact, Ashley's agent also had discouraged her from taking on this role, and she just knew that God had called her to this role, and she wasn't going to listen to anyone else's voice that was going to give her a discouragement in that. It was Friday before filming started on Monday that Ashley got the call. And she got the call. She had just a 3 to 4 hour window to pack up her life and so she says she put all her dirty clothes into a suitcase and was not even able to say goodbye to her husband, but her son, yes. And she got on a plane from North Carolina to Stillwater, Oklahoma for the next 6 weeks to be the lead actress. You know, God appointed Ashley Bratcher to this role in amazing ways, and some of them she's spoken about very publicly on Fox News. Maybe you've caught those interviews, but her mother had only found out that Ashley was working on this film when Ashley was in hair and makeup preparing to go into production. And she finally took her mother's call. She was concerned about talking to her mom about being in this film because she knew that her mother had had an abortion at the age of 16. And she wanted to be careful with her emotions and not bring any condemnation and shame. And so she very gently just told her mother that she had been cast as the lead in this film about abortion. And her mother broke down and started to cry. And she asked her mother why she was crying. And she said, "It's because I have something I've never told you. That when I was pregnant with you, I did go into an abortion clinic and I laid on the table. The doctor was late. He didn't come in when he was supposed to, but a nurse came in who was very heavily pregnant, and I looked at her belly and I knew that I couldn't go through with it. I got up off the table and I kept you." And it was such a powerful moment for both of them. In fact, if you remember, or maybe you haven't seen this movie yet, I have to remember that, people.
No spoilers.
But just at the end of the movie, Ashley's real-life mother does make an appearance, a cameo appearance in the film. Yes. So,
Can
surprise.
you tell me who it is without
Yes,
spoiling
it's a blonde-haired lady in a green shirt. How's that? Does that help you?
Now I'm going to have to watch it. That doesn't help me at all. I don't remember what color shirts they were wearing.
But can I just say one other thing, Dave? This is something that you don't know about Ashley, is that her mother named her after the actress Vivien Leigh's character in Gone with the Wind, Scarlett O'Hara. Little piece of film history is that when Gone with the Wind began filming, they did not have their Scarlett O'Hara. They had cast several actresses, and they were filming around Vivien Leigh until they found her, and she started that role. So it's just very interesting that our film was also like a Gone with the Wind in the sense that we did not have our lead actress, and everything was in place but her. And then there's a scene in the movie, I will give one spoiler, where Abby Johnson's character, Ashley Bratcher as Abby Johnson is dressed as Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind.
Oh,
how about that?
I remember that.
And that was written into the screenplay years before this ever came into production.
That's amazing. Little.
Those are the golden eggs that are hidden in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
So let's go back to the opposition the movie's having. Tell me about some of the ways we've dodged some of the hard censorship Talk to us about some of the ways it's being censored, both at top levels and local levels.
Well, many, but for example, Twitter, the weekend of release, shut down our Twitter account.
And how long it had been active until then?
9 months.
9 months before that, with over 200,000, and suddenly the weekend of the release, it's down for some thing that they could not explain.
And it wasn't an algorithm, was it? It was a reviewed decision.
Right, and so our directors went to Congress. They were invited to to say their side of the story, and Facebook was there, and Twitter were there, and the questions were asked. You know, what happened? And Twitter said, "We don't know. It's a glitch." And so you go from thousands of people that are on the Twitter account to about 200. And then they restored it, but by that time, of course, the movie had come out already. So those are some of the oppositions that we had encountered. Facebook did not want to advertise. We couldn't advertise on Facebook and say, no, we can't advertise your movie. So the opposition from the media has been tremendous. Netflix said, we don't want to touch your movie. Amazon, we don't want to touch that. You know, we can't give you any space.
Wow.
And that's the opposition, you know, that we had encountered. Even on set, we had opposition, but God was there, and nothing really happened because God was in front of this project. So the more damage the media or these companies do, it gets on the press, they write an article, right? And it comes to bite them. And that's been the story of the opposition.
Can you talk about what happened on set?
Sure. we had so many things happen on set. So as pastors, we compile a group of prayer warriors. We were called the 5 Stones. And if you know, because of Goliath, David and Goliath, he put 5 stones in his little sack to bring down Goliath, and it only took 1. Which is remarkable. But we were called, so what happened on set is that we were able to, through prayer, through fasting, through anointing, we were able to come against the opposition in many ways, from the weather to the unions wanting to, this is a
And when you say weather, I've heard you talk about this, so I want to bring it out. He means hurricanes.
Hurricanes Alley.
Not just a rainy day.
Yeah. Tornadoes, not hurricanes. I'm sorry, those come from the sea, like in the movie. But Tornado Alley. So it's there. So we were in Tulsa, and we're filming, and we know that this thing is coming, and we're on the TV, and we're watching, and it's coming, and we see the path, and suddenly, right before it hits still water, it splits in 2, and one goes this way, and the other one goes that way.
Come on.
So stuff like that is just like the hand of God.
Yeah.
The hand of God protecting us from those that wanted to come and destroy, that the unions came in and they wanted to shut the movie down, and that did not happen. To the extent that not even one part of the company had a scratch on their finger or they hit their finger. There was absolutely nothing. And the directors are saying, in 30 years, we've never seen nothing bad happen.
Wow.
So definitely divine protection over the cast, crew, and technically no glitches, no rain. We didn't stop even once for filming, because every time you stop, the money continues to run, in major ways.
So tell me about one of the miracles of provision that you guys had to pray through. You said there's investors for the movie, and we need to support good things when it comes out, but...
Can we be honest? We
Please.
talk about opposition, and fundraising was one of those areas that we experienced a lot of opposition. And I would just say that many were called, but few were chosen. And so it was an unusual time in the history of this movie, because the people that were involved in the fundraising element said, we've never encountered this much opposition to just raising funds.
Wow.
It was even to afterwards, where if you know anything about the movie business, there's the money that goes into production, and then there's the money that goes in afterwards for the advertising budget. So that money that's raised is in equal measure to what we do in production, but it's the first money that's repaid. So it's like you're going in and you're giving a loan, but it's a guaranteed, you're going to get 15% return. It's called last money in, first money out. We had difficulty even raising that money when we had the movie already finished, in the can, ready to be distributed, and we were having even while the movie was out, our team was still out there trying to raise the P&A budget. So for whatever reason...
P&A?
Prints and advertising.
Right.
Yeah. So, but that was some opposition. But yes, the favorite story from our team is that it was Friday, the day that we cast Ashley Bratcher, and we were $1 million short of our budget. Our budget was $6 million, so that was a significant amount to be short. And what it meant is
Hard to find on a Friday afternoon.
Excuse me?
Hard to find $1 million on a Friday afternoon.
Not in the kingdom.
Yeah, right.
So there
Good
happened
answer.
to be a man who was flying on a plane with his girlfriend, and he heard from the Holy Spirit as he was flying, and they had been praying about this movie, and they heard very specifically the Lord tell them, you need to give $1 million to this person, this account, which was Carrie Solomon, our director. And he says, Lord, are you sure? And so anyway, this man picked up the phone from his plane, said, give me your number. I'm going to give you $1 million. And Carrie could not believe it. And what I love about the story is, yes, this man did give $1 million right before the banks closed, saved our production, saved our movie, literally. But what happened afterwards was so impacting, is that the directors, Carrie Solomon, Chuck Konzelman, and the producers, Chris Jones, Daryl Lefevre, all dropped to their knees and they just thanked God, and they praised him, and they worshiped. And I just thought, because they knew that at the last moment he had provided that miracle that they needed. And I just thought that was so beautiful of hearing that story. But yes, the provision came in and continued to come in miraculous ways.
And it's been last minute. Everything has been last minute in this project with the Lord. Very last minute. The actress on Friday, the $1 million on Friday, and the big investors that promised, oh yeah, we'll write you checks, no problem. We're all in. They would not write the checks, but it came from smaller investors. It came from a whole bunch of large pool of people that gave little bits and little bits and little bits until we were able to raise the money. It didn't come from the big givers, and we were thinking, we're going to talk to the big givers, big dinners and stuff like that. They wouldn't write a check.
And I also just want to say something, because this is public, in the public domain, that the gentleman who gave the money is Mike Lindell, the My Pellowe founder. I don't know if you guys have My Pellowe out here in Australia.
Don't think so.
He's a very well-known personality in America. So he had been a former drug addict, and the Lord took him, and just recently, in the last few years, and
Wow.
he was on the streets, and now he's a very, very wealthy businessman.
We'll have to see if there's some co-branding opportunity there. Pellowe, My Pillows.
Yeah, I think you're related, maybe.
Your brain is turning.
Merchandise. Look, I want to take this opportunity, I think, to recommend to everybody, find a pro-life organisation and donate to them. Donate a big amount or donate a small amount every month, because there's lots of work to do to change our culture. There's going to be lots of healing needed as people come to terms with the truth. And as that shame is lifted, as they need to talk through counselling. And there's so much political change that's needed, communication, media that's needed. So, this is going to be a time where we don't want to leave our pro-life organisations alone. And just trust God to lead you to the right one. We don't need to all support the same one. But, yeah, be involved in being part of that solution, which is what we can do above and beyond. And we'll talk about solutions a little bit more later. Now, what about in cinemas themselves, where the movie's being screened? What kind of ground level opposition has there been to this movie?
I love that question, because the answer is none. In America, anyway. And I know we have somewhat different cultures as it relates to abortion and opposition. So I don't know what will happen in Australia, but I can say that we anticipated an opposition that never materialized.
You mean like protests?
Like protests. But we did find opposition in an unusual way, and that was through the theater employees themselves. So we were hearing a lot of reports where some of the movie was being shielded from the screen by theater employees that would hold up a cardboard piece of paper in front of the projector so that you couldn't see some of the key abortion scenes that actually are pivotal for understanding what this movie is all about.
Isn't that incredible?
It is.
Brazen.
And our advertising, the posters that you see going on the walls or outside theater chains, those would mysteriously vanish and they were never put up. And our people would go, hey, what happened to the poster? Oh, we never got it. And they're like, well, excuse me, but I have the receipt right here saying that you should have it. And they're like, oh, right, yes, I think that might be in the back closet. Let me go check. So, those types of things are important, because people that may not have ever heard about Unplanned, but they're at the theater, they see the poster and they're going to be intrigued. What's this about?
Yep.
That was one thing. And then also people would show up to the theater with their ticket in hand for a movie that's on the marquee and go into the theater and they say, oh, sorry, by the way, we're not showing it right now. And they say, okay, well, can I see it at the next showing at 6 o'clock? Oh, no, we're not going to have it again at 6 o'clock. We have technical difficulties. So that was the type of opposition we have faced.
Wow. So, as this movie's being shown around the nation, what measurable impacts has there been on the culture in America?
I think a movie like this brings out something that no other movie has brought out before. This is not cowboys and Indians. This is something that is steering the culture in America. It definitely is, because there's a lot of hurt. And when there is hurt, people pay attention and they do two things. They go away or they're ready to be healed. And so the culture, I remember Carrie saying the day of the premiere in Hollywood to the big audiences there that we were going to just do it. The following day the movie was going to come out. He says, tomorrow the world will not be the same because people are going to see this movie and it's going to radically change their lives or the lives of their families or the lives of their church or whatever is going on. So it is something that socially will impact you. If you're not impacted by this, if you're not affected by this, then what affects you?
One of the things that startled us the most was just seeing how many pro-choice women were becoming pro-life after seeing the film. They said, we remember reading some of these quotes, and they said, I went into this movie because I knew I had nothing to fear. I knew that I knew what I believed about abortion and women's rights to choose, and they were totally gobsmacked by what they saw, and their lives were changed. And they said, I think I'm really pro-life now. And so we saw a lot of those types of stories come out.
And that's right. What do you have to fear? It's truth. I mean, if you're wrong, what would you be afraid of finding out you're wrong for? Like, who wants to walk around with the liability of ignorance? Saying goes, ignorance is bliss. Nah, ignorance is a liability. Why would you? That's how you stub a toe walking around in the dark. It'll injure you.
And I would ask, we invite pro-choice and pro-life to watch this movie. For the pro-choicers, we say, what do you have to fear? We're gonna show you what's happening in the back room. If this is where you truly believe, then you can continue to move in that direction. But at least you need to know the truth. You need to know what's going on behind the curtain, what an abortion looks like, what are the implications. And if that is what you support, fine. But you may not support that, and you may say, I didn't pay to get involved in that. That is my recommendation to those that are pro-choice. For the pro-life, it's a no-brainer.
Well, it's not just a no-brainer for the pro-life, too, because we hear a lot of pro-life people say, I don't need that. I know everything there is to know about abortion.
Yep.
And I'd say, well, let's see. Let's test that theory.
Yep.
But also, one of the oppositions that we heard from pro-choicers is that, I don't need to see this movie. I support Planned Parenthood. They've been good to me. Well, that's all fine and good if you needed an aspirin. But, I'm just saying there's more to an organization than just the service that you received. Right. And don't you want to know what you're supporting, what's going on behind the scenes, the things that you're not aware of? And shouldn't you know that before you support this organization with your dollars and with your service?
I'm fairly comfortable talking to people, especially people that I disagree with. But I want to encourage you because sometimes I'm still surprised by the results of just having a conversation, like you were saying. And recently I was talking to, I won't identify a party, but a leftist politician and invited her to come tonight. And I invited her to come and watch the exclusive screening of the movie. And she's very pro-abortion. And she emailed me today and said, Dave, I'm really sorry, I have to work tonight, but I really want to see the movie. Is there another opportunity to? Now imagine if we could get everybody in Australia to just know the truth. There's no ulterior motive, no agenda here. We just want you to know what you're supporting and know the full picture. And you may still be pro-abortion afterwards and come up with some ideas on how we can still do better to care for women. But you need to know the truth so you can confidently, whatever position you're in, invite people to see this movie, and don't be afraid to invite people who may have a different perspective to you on it. I want to, for those people who are watching via the live stream, there is an opportunity for you to participate in this evening. We're not actually seeing the comments beneath the video that you may be typing right now, but you can text a question in to us, and they'll be thrown in the mix and maybe asked all by themselves or as part of a collection. And the number, if you're going to send a text question in, is 0468 378 255. That's 0468 378 255. And the first question, which I haven't thought of, but it's interesting. Has the movie been a financial success? What's the box office record like? And if so, what's next?
A little education on box office success to help put things into perspective.
Yeah.
As of today, the numbers are 18 million that has been taken in box office receipts.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for a film to be a success, it has to jump through some hurdles. So one is to return back the amount that was raised for the production, which was $6 million. Mm-hmm. And then you take that P&A budget, the prints and advertising budget, which is another $7 million. So we're at $13 million just in the cost that it takes to bring this to you. And
that's just North America.
That's North America, right. We're not even talking about, just to the audience.
Yeah.
And then there is the distributor's fee, which can be quite hefty as well. And then you have to understand that the theater chains take 50% of everything that first comes in. So we take the $18 million and we bring it down to $9 million. And then we have the $6 million and the $7 million and the distributor's fees, plus the interest that's to be returned back to the investors. So we're not profitable yet. But in the eyes of actually the box office, yes, this is a successful film. But I just want to give people the context, because sometimes they're going like, well, you're rolling in the money. What's happened to all that? And it's like, well, not exactly. In fact, our team is really a skeletal crew, and we're here in Australia because God's called us to be here. We've had over 50 nations that have asked us to come to their countries. And because of one woman's faithfulness before God, and he gave her a dream about us coming to Australia, we are here because we agreed that the presence of God was on that dream, and we needed to come and bring this film to Australia and help to pave the way.
It's brilliant. Did you have something to add to that?
Nope.
Very good. Here's a quick question I can probably predict the answer to. What has been the response from Planned Parenthood?
Zero, almost.
Deafening silence?
Silence, because we know and they know that if they make noise, it's going to work against them. And secondly, double jeopardy doesn't work. They couldn't definitely sue Abby Johnson. They already did and lost.
Spoiler alert.
And so I think there was one small comment that they had on media, and it was very weak, but we have not heard from Planned Parenthood at all, which is good, because then we don't have to worry about them. It is about them, but we don't have to worry about them.
I want to kick that. Kick that hornet's nest to see what happens. Very good. Under this video link, when it's published, not live right now, I might get you to shout some out, Jeanette, but if you have experienced abortion in any way at all, I want you to know that this movie is a love letter to the abortion industry. And that's Abby's words, who used to work in it. This isn't designed to bring condemnation or guilt. In fact, it's designed to release and provide opportunity for healing. So there are a number of resources that you can turn to. Certainly, shout out a couple of websites for me, Jeanette. emilysvoice.com and notbornyet.com. Life Choice Australia. If you Google that, you'll be able to find that. Cherish Life is a great lobby group. Priceless House is a great resource centre in Logan. Pregnancy Helpline Australia. For all around Australia, Pregnancy Helpline Australia. If you pop that into your search engine and do that. We want you to receive healing and fullness and move on, because it is a wound that needs attention. Because if you ignore it, it just doesn't recover. And we want everybody to be whole and functional and everything for their employer and family that they can be.
I'd like to speak to that too, because obviously this movie is touching on some very deep wounds that are opening up in people's hearts. When we were on the film set, we noticed that it was opening stories in both cast, crew, and those that just came and visited us on set. We had several women who had had abortions 40 years in the past that had never told a soul, that when they came onto our set, they all of a sudden they opened up and started to share their stories.
Wow.
And the reason they did is because they felt for the first time they were in a safe place to share their secret, to surrender their secret. It was such a major issue for our directors that when we came back from filming, they asked me to write a devotional that would bring healing to women and men who have been touched by abortion. And so rather than title this book Unplanned, the devotional, is planned from the start, a healing devotional, because unplanned has that connotation of things are out of our control, out of our ability to make sense of things, but we know that God has had a plan for our lives and our purposes. And so it's a book that goes beyond just the abortion element, but it's actually reconnecting people's hearts back to the purposes that God's had for them.
And this is how much on Amazon?
It's $20 Australian.
You could get a lot more for that. It's designed to be a resource.
It is a resource, and it's based off of the 5 key areas of emotional pain that women and men face after abortion, of grief, guilt, shame, regret, and depression. And it's moving in the opposite spirit, how the Lord wants to bring healing to those areas. So it's based off of testimonies of those that have gone through abortion and found healing by the hand of God. And there's power in testimony. And then there are eight days of devotional journey where you're reconnecting with God's heart. There are some participatory questions to be answered, and sometimes a reflection where the scripture says, "Be still and know that I am God." And so it's those moments of stillness where he speaks and we can hear his voice.
Right.
We're very attuned to the lies of the enemy. We've heard his voice so often. You're not going to be a good mother. You can't carry this pregnancy. This is not a good time for you. This is not a child. This is not a baby. And all these things that we've heard and we've carried, but we haven't done so well in tuning into God's voice. And so this is a book to reconnect your heart to his voice.
So this question is very important, and it speaks to a major issue I want to spend some time talking about tonight, flowing on from what we've just discussed. What tools can pastors and organisation leaders use to help women and families heal from having an abortion? And let's just take that first part first. Obviously, there's this tool. That's really good. And if you go to notbornyet.com, there's a link on that website which lists all of the most of the abortion counselling and unplanned pregnancy counselling services around Australia. So it becomes a directory to find things that are perhaps perfectly suited or closer to you. Are there any other tools that you think?
Well, I think the best tool is compassion. Let's bring out compassion and take off that taboo again. I was raised in the church, and in all of my life going to Sunday services, I never heard a sermon once that talked about God's forgiveness for those that have stepped through the doors of an abortion clinic and had an abortion.
Yeah,
we have, I don't know if you celebrate this, but in America we celebrate the Sanctity of Human Life Sunday, and that's on January the 1st.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. Oh, my word.
Have you heard of it, Brendan? Brendan has.
Sanctity of Human Life Sunday. And so we would celebrate this and honor this every year, where we talk about the life of the unborn child and the sanctity of human life, but never ever were we talking about the mothers who had...
Is it a nationwide thing?
It's nationwide.
It's not a denomination thing?
No, it's nationwide. It coincides with
like
Roe
that
v.
day.
Wade.
It's a good day.
The decision. Yeah. So that was just really striking. And so I'd say start the conversation. So many pastors feel like they are not able to talk about abortion.
Just show of hands in the audience. Has anybody else heard of that here in Australia?
Sanctity
3 out of maybe 54?
Wow.
Not very many, maybe 10%.
Okay, well, let's bring it to Australia.
Now I don't feel ignorant. Thank you all. If you
Something good to start.
Yes.
Let's start something.
Yeah, let's start it. I mean, get it bigger. It's already started.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, for the pastors, we just encourage them to speak about this in their churches and to their congregations, because by being silent, it's just caused more shame. when I was interviewing women and men for this book, one of the themes that came back to me many times were, I've committed the unpardonable sin, not because it says so in the Bible, but because my pastor would never talk about it.
Wow.
So that must be the unpardonable sin, because it's never been addressed.
Well, this is the second part of this person's question. Why do you think there is so much restriction on or resistance in churches from exposing abortion for what it is, so that healing can begin?
May I continue on that one? Yeah, I would just say, because out of compassion, we think that we are being loving by not heaping more shame or condemnation by bringing up wounds. I think that there's some legitimate areas where pastors really feel like they're doing the best thing and wanting to be sensitive, and we overstep our sensitivity and then not realize that we are heaping more pain onto a person's heart. That's one area.
I do believe that from the pulpit this needs to be addressed. It's the same message that we preach in America. Pastors, leaders, shepherds need to shepherd the flock and pastor the flock. And this is something that is happening on any given Sunday. If you look at your congregation, there is at least 30% of the women there and men that are being affected or by abortion or had an abortion. So it already exists in the church, and I do believe that there is not. They don't address it because they don't know how. Because if you're going to address something that grave, you better have some resources around you, because they're going to come, and so you need to prepare systematically what you're going to do in order to really, really address it. You know, if you just do it on a whim and you just preach it, some people may not come back, or you're not going to look very good. But we need to systematically have a program. The institutions that are out there are helping, but this is happening in the churches. This is happening right now.
Yeah.
And so pastors need to prepare themselves.
And this is my concern, is I get the compassion and the caution of not wanting to further hurt somebody who's been hurt by abortion. But what I worry about is what hurt is that silence causing to people who have not yet had an abortion, and through lack of information go on to have an abortion. Because, like, that's us. I mean, this is why I do what I do, is because I want Christians to be more educated. We need to talk about these issues so that we're intelligent voters, so that we get intelligent government, so that we get good justice and wisdom in our culture. And so, yeah, it's actually the warning, like the lighthouse. There's rocky shallows here. Don't go in this area because you will get hurt.
Well, that just goes back to, the 95-year-old woman that's still grieving every day. She thinks about the abortion that she had, decades earlier.
Right.
Where was her voice? Where was her story? What would have happened if her granddaughter, who ended up having an abortion, would have heard her grandmother's story?
Yeah.
What if we had these stories out there and to say, abortion doesn't just affect the woman when she goes through that procedure. It affects her every day of her life from then on in ways that she's not even aware of sometimes. It affects her in her relationships and her ability to relate to her husband, to her partner, to her children, to her future children. It affects her in her ability, in her emotional capacity. It sometimes brings on depression, but also suicidal ideation is much higher in women that have had abortions. Yeah. And just body image areas and eating disorders and all these things that you think are isolated incidences. Like, so I'm depressed, I'm going to my psychiatrist because I'm depressed, but not realizing that there's that root cause that needs to be dealt with first.
So true. It's been taken out of DSM. It's been taken out of the psychology diagnosis handbooks that could be a possible cause, or that the condition even exists. But it was widely acknowledged just 1 or 2 editions ago, post-abortion trauma. Another resource somebody's texted in is the Hope Alive program, hopealiveaustralia.com.au. So check that out. If you're at home watching this later, share it on Facebook. You don't know who of your friends might be needing to see that message. And do that with, occasionally from now on. hopealiveaustralia.com.au. It's a therapeutic program presented by two counsellors from the awesome and highly reputable Priceless House ministry here in Brisbane. Okay, another question. What do I say to someone who says, I'm thankful I had the choice to not bring a baby into my mess of a life and that baby could go to be with God?
That's a heavy one, isn't it? Because we know that the choice that they made was not the choice that God had for them. You know, it's an easy way out to say, well, my baby's with God, I don't need to worry about that. Why can't we just say, I made that choice for my child to have an excellent life with a family that loved and cared and nurtured and nourished them, nurtured them. When I was 21 years old, I was a flight attendant in training, and one of the women fell pregnant.
I can picture that.
Can you? Thank you. One of the ladies fell pregnant while we were in training, and she asked one of our instructors to take her for an abortion, which opened up the dialogue, and this was in 1985. And it opened up the discussion. I remember her leaving for her abortion and her coming back, and that night we were all out in a restaurant, and I saw her at the end of a bar, sitting by herself, drowning her sorrows in liquor, and I'd never seen somebody so in despair. And so we came back and we talked about it as friends, and I was the only person that had not had an abortion. Now, statistics say that 1 in 3 women by the age of 45 will have had an abortion, but in that group of women, in that group of 30, I was the only one that had not had an abortion.
Wow.
And one of the comments was from my roommate, who said she was 16 years old when she fell pregnant, and she chose to have an abortion because she would rather live her life she didn't want to live her life with the knowledge that she had a child out in the world that she didn't know. So it'd be better off for that child to be dead than to know that that child was living a happy, productive life somewhere without her. And I just thought, so that was her 16-year-old mind, but it was her 21-year-old mind that was still holding on to that lie, that it was better that she killed her child than let it have a productive life in a home with somebody that would love him or her. So how do you respond to that? You have to just respond in love, and as you're guided by the Holy Spirit, He'll give you the information, the words to share. But, you know, we have to counteract that lie with the truth. And maybe the best way to do that is just to ask questions. You know, what makes you feel like life isn't worth living if that child wasn't living with you? I mean, I don't know. There have to be the right questions that the Holy Spirit will give, but I feel like instead of casting an argument, just ask a gentle question.
Yeah, it's very important not to force an issue with some people. I mean, I like to articulate the difference. You know, if I'm talking to somebody who I strongly disagree with about the lifestyle that they're living deliberately, choices they're constantly making, well, if I'm talking about that in a YouTube video, I'm going to be taking a political posture. I'm going to talk about the rights and wrongs and be somewhat sensitive. But if I'm talking to that person face to face, I'm going to be pastoral. Right. I'm going to be personal. I mean, the politics is irrelevant. I mean, if they're interested in the truth and the conversation goes there naturally, but my point won't be to persuade them they're wrong and I'm right, and or even just help them find truth in a more nice way. It's actually just going to walk with them where they're at and at the speed that they want to go. And you might drop a crumb, and if they eat it, then maybe offer them a spoonful of truth. But if you try and give them a wheelbarrow or a dump truck, and they're just going to choke on it and regurgitate it, you're not even going to have the opportunity to continue to walk with that person on their journey of discovery. And it's okay for them to not have the truth that you have. Like I've got areas of immaturity that Gabriel might be able to help me with, certainly. And so if he's got an area that I need to help him with, it's not a competition of superiority or anything like that. It's just we walk together, and as opportunity comes up for him to say, "Hey, Dave."
Yes, and I will do that for you, definitely. I think we can approach it from the life perspective. If this was your daughter, if this is somebody that is your family,
That's good.
you would say, try to have a conversation about the value of life before, well, I'm going to go get an abortion because right now my career, but sit down with them and say, let's talk about the value of life. I'll give you an example. A person close to me said, I can't have this baby. I'm done. Right now in my life, it's not going to work. And my response, our response was, we'll take the baby. We'll just take the baby. And her brother said, I'll take the baby. So if you're ready to have a discussion, you should be ready to offer solutions.
Yeah.
Because if you're just going to criticize why you're wrong, what are you doing, but you come in love because I love this person. I said, I want the best for you. Let me help you with compassion, with love, right? And explain what the value of life is. For them, they may not know the value of life.
Yeah. Look, there are answers to every lie. There's the truth. And I think explaining abortion is actually very easy. It's very straightforward. And the hard thing is that you're dealing with people who don't want to see the truth sometimes. And that's where you have to just deal with the person that's in front of you, because there's not a one-size-fits-all answer for those situations. But I think it is important to learn all the answers and the argument, because there's a lot of classic arguments, and there's a lot. It's really easy to learn how to advocate for life, and that's just a brilliant one. And that's what one of the T-shirts that I sell says: every human life is precious and worth defending at every stage. So answer that about the question to the baby that you think is better off in heaven. Well, no, because every human life is precious and worth defending at every stage.
Well, show them life. This movie shows you life, what is really happening in the womb. Show them a picture of the sonogram. Show them the pictures. Open the album of the family and look at pictures of life. Show them the little thing that they give you when you go to the doctor. Show them life so they can recognize life. Because the first thing they say, I don't need this right now, and they shut it down and they call it something else. They don't call it a baby. You call it a baby when you want it, but you call it a fetus or a thing when you don't want it. You're already convinced.
Well, and I also want to say one of the things that I think is that we need to change the narrative of how we speak about pregnancy, how we speak to young women who become pregnant, and to the men who've been a partner to that. It's like we talk about pregnancy, but we need to address them as mothers and fathers. Congratulations, you're a mother, and you're making decisions now about your child. What are the decisions that you want to make? I mean, women that are pregnant, when they become pregnant, they think about, taking prenatal vitamins and taking care of their bodies. But for those that maybe don't want to carry their babies to full term, they're thinking about having an abortion. But tell them, you're a mom. Congratulations, you're making choices for your child. How does that reframe the mind? How does that change the thinking in terms of, this isn't just a blob of tissue, this is a baby, I'm a mother?
That word congratulations is something every expectant mum should hear very early. Congratulations. One of the important statistics you need to memorize so you can have these discussions well is that 70% of women who make an abortion choice would have made a different choice if they had have felt there was some offer of support from a significant person in their life. That's 70%. And that's on us. We're the significant people in their lives. We'd need to just make sure everybody knows, hey, especially everybody that's significant to us or that we're significant to, is that I'd be there for you no matter what, no matter the circumstances or context. You wouldn't be alone.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that, that's a conversation that needs to start in our churches. There was a study that was shown of women that were post-abortive, and I think it was over 1,000 women. How many of you felt safe in your church to talk about your pregnancy that was not planned? How many of you felt safe to talk to your pastor? And the results were so low because they said instead, I felt like church was a place where people would gossip rather than help. And so we need to reframe that. And this goes back to the issue of taboo. We need to take that taboo label off of abortion so that when a young woman in your congregation or an older woman in your congregation falls pregnant, we say, congratulations. And you know, that's hard because I was raised in that generation where it was a taboo and it was something that was spoken about behind closed doors, and oh, you know, so-and-so got pregnant, and oh, this is sad. And I remember it was the millennial generation that's starting to take that taboo off. I remember speaking, we have somebody in our family who fell pregnant outside of wedlock, and that was my first response. It's like, oh, that's sad. And my millennial daughter says, why are you saying that's sad? That's not sad. This is a happy thing. And the crazy thing is that that's from my daughter who may not hold the same issues, the same values about life and about life in the womb.
Wow.
So, but be happy. She was saying, be happy for this. And so that was a real eye-opener for me. So I'm just saying I'm in that same boat. I'm needing to reframe how I respond to those who fall pregnant outside of what we understand to be the will of God in relationship and marriage, and say congratulations and mean it. And say, now how can I help you as you go along your journey to becoming, to giving birth to your baby, and from then on.
So here's a interesting one. The final decision is made by a stressed, fearful woman, and I tell you what, the movie really displays that very well. The abortion scenes that are displayed are tastefully done and appropriately truthful. They're not gratuitous violence. But some of the scenes that were much more upsetting for me was the very discernible fear on the face of the actresses that were portraying young women who were making an abortion decision. And my heart just... The story, the movie, it effectively elicits compassion for them. Just the pain and the fear that they're feeling at that moment. And so this person asks the question, how can a movie address the decision at the coalface? That is not a cultural thing. It's a very real decision being made by a lonely, hurting woman.
Well, it really is. I don't think it's a cultural decision. I think it's a personal decision. You know, you are in a situation where you're confronted with you being a dad or a mom instantly without no planning. And so if you take it from that point of view and you say, I don't know what this means, I don't know what is the value of what I'm pregnant. You know, what does that mean? If you're not searching, if you don't look for the right, for life, or if you don't go to somebody who's going to affirm that, if you go to somebody who says, yeah, you need to get rid of it. You need to get rid of this baby. It's over. You're going to ruin your life. I think many women do find that culture because of what's going on in your country. Then the answer is get rid of it. I don't know if it's free, but it's the right thing to do. And so we are confronted with those choices. They're not always sound choices, right? And so as the church, we need to be aware of our women and men, and what are the choices that they're making when they're confronted with something like that.
I think the way this helps is before the crucial decision moment, is that, you know, hopefully someone facing this decision, and hopefully nobody faces this decision, but hopefully the women who over the next year or two or forever make this decision have this information available. I did an interview just published on Saturday, just the night before Mother's Day. And in that interview, Jeanette, who the cameras can't see, but Jeanette Harris from Emily's Voice was there, as well as Stacey McBride Wilson. And she faced an unplanned pregnancy and an abortion decision at 16 years of age in a Christian family. And she had all the support and everything else like that was needed, and she was still going to make that decision. But her testimony is that if she had have been better educated, if there had have been better information available, if there had have been better decisions going on in culture, in school, in internet resources, in the places that she was looking, then she would have never even considered abortion in the first place. Isn't that interesting? That she made this decision, but if she had have had better information, she certainly would have made a different decision. And if you haven't seen the interview, the good news is she made a different decision on the abortionist's table. And her daughter's now 14 years old and a vibrant personality, praise God.
And to that point, that's exactly what the movie shows.
That's exactly what the movie
shows. It shows, this is what abortion is. It'll give you all the facts and the information, and if you see it, that's why we encourage people to see the movie, because, all the stops are taken away, and you're really seeing what an abortion is from all points of view. I mean, here's a counselor trying to convince the girls to have an abortion, and she's doing discounts and stuff like that. That's not what we want to hear. We want to hear good information to make the right decision. Hopefully the decision is for life, right? So what are my options? Yep. And then you can weigh the consequences based on your choice.
So just on what the movie shows, in America, the Office for Film Classification decided that this was an R18, should only be seen by people 18 years and older. Tell me why you think that is, and if you think that's... I can tell you what I think, but...
Yes.
Then it'd be no fun having guests.
So the MPAA is an organization that is made up of 10 women or a group of 10 adults in Beverly Hills that views all of the films that come through and gives it the classification. It's just important for people to know, when you see the rating, who's telling you what is acceptable. And in this case, it was a group of 10 mothers in Beverly Hills who saw this film and deemed it an R-rated movie. There were divided opinions about whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, and in our office, we tended to believe that was a good thing, because it shows the irony of the left and the position that says that, a teenage girl in America can go and have an abortion without her parents' knowledge or permission, but she's not able to see a movie that talks about abortion without her parents being with her. So, I mean, it's completely ironic. And yet in other countries, I'm trying to think, it was actually in Canada where it received the equivalency of a PG-13 rating. Which also there was a thought that, well, then you're telling us that you don't think that abortion is a big deal. So it's okay for, so it can be seen either way. But yes, we felt like it was a deliberate attempt to keep the population that needs to see this most hidden in the dark and closeted from the truth of what abortion really is.
And at the same time, the R rating, which is violence, really labels the movie saying that abortion is violent, and that it is a violent act. So no matter how they spin it, they lose. That's my take. No matter how you spin this, okay, give me an R, it's violent. Abortion is violent. Give me a 14. They can't win because God is in it.
Now, has it been banned in Canada?
It hasn't been banned, but in order for the film to go into Canada, it needs to have a distributor, and all of the distributors have turned it down. Right. So without a distributor, Unplanned cannot go into a theater without, that's just the way the laws work there.
Yep.
So we're working on some alternative ways to get the movie into Canada, but yay for Canada. Hello, Canadians out there if you're watching. But one of the ideas was people were so in uproar about this ban that they said that they were going to rent buses and bus people across the border to come see it in America. So.
Very cool. Now, one person has suggested via the question text number that this movie should be compulsory viewing for all members of Parliament before they vote on an abortion bill.
I agree.
Sounds like a good idea?
Yeah.
And tell me about a particular state where that's actually happened in America.
I'm sorry, about the bill?
Yeah.
Well, there's the
Do you want me to tell you? If you know the one.
The Georgia heartbeat
There
bill.
we go.
Georgia, yeah.
Yes, in fact, our actress Ashley Bratcher lives in the state of Georgia, and she was part. The movie Unplanned had a part to play in this bill being passed. In fact, I think that I heard that the legislator who had brought this bill into the forefront had been very discouraged because it wasn't gaining any traction
Right.
until Unplanned came out. And then all this attention was brought back to the surface, and they were able to regenerate this bill and actually
And the
pass it.
legislators watched the movie, I heard, the night before they voted?
I don't know. Yes?
Yeah, that's...
Good.
Has anybody heard that? Is this fake news? No?
I think this is the heart bill.
The
The
heartbeat
heartbeat bill.
So the next day after they watched
yeah.
this movie, the majority of the legislators voted
Yeah.
to ban abortions where there was a detectable heartbeat.
Right, and it passed into law, and so now what's happening is that other states are following, because that's the way things happen in the United States. Oh, this state does it, we have to do this. And so the movie creates momentum. It's creating this momentum, really. We don't call it a movie anymore, we call it a movement. It's really starting to look more like a movement.
It is, yeah.
It's hard to keep up with all the news that comes out, to be honest. I mean, we have an internal group that we share information and knowledge and articles that come out, and it's just overwhelming because it seems every day there's just tons of information that's coming out about this state's doing this and this state's doing that. And that's a good thing, because since when have we heard that much conversation about abortion in our nation? We haven't.
It is good. America's doing so good. We need to see the same kind of momentum towards life around the world.
Well, and Vice President Pence saw the movie, and he's very, very pro-life. And another big event is in New York. In New York, they had a big event by Focus on the Family. It's a Christian organization worldwide. And they had a live ultrasound of a baby right there in the big Times Square. And they were showing, and the baby was Abby Johnson's baby, which she is pregnant.
Yeah.
And so all that, it creates that momentum of a movement to be able to overturn these things at the political level.
Yeah. So one question, what forward steps have been made to have the movie shown in Australia? What are we doing? What are you doing? What are the producers? What's the team doing proactively to get this movie shown in Australia? And prophesy.
We have prophets in Australia who have been prophesying over this issue. Yes. I would just say, the first step is just to begin the dialogue, to actually... It helps. You might not think that it helps, but it helps for us to hear your voices. In fact, it was by hearing your voices that it brought us here to start paving the way for Unplanned to be shown. We have, as you said earlier, this Unplanned Australia Facebook group, and it went from 0 to 5,000 people in a week or 2 weeks. And so
Couple of days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just keep it going, because those are the voices that get the attention. I'm saying there were over 50 nations that contacted us that wanted us to bring Unplanned to their nation, and yet it was those squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so Australia
Aussie.
Yeah, one of the top 5 countries that we heard loudly from. And so that's why we're here. We're devoting our energies, we're devoting our resources to making those connections. But it's your voices, and the reason why your voices are important, it's not just to make us pay attention, but it's to make the distributors pay attention. It's to make the theater owners pay attention, because those are the people that will make ultimately those decisions to bring the movie into their theaters so that you can see it. And if they see this change.org petition that has, let's say, 100,000 signatures,
Yep.
Now we're looking at a business decision. Now we're not looking at this from the standpoint, do I agree with this movie or not? I don't care. This movie's going to make me money. I'm going to bring it here.
Yeah, that's the way most people will think.
Yeah, because the theaters are, interested in one thing, money, right? We're interested in lives, but they have to make money too.
Yeah.
And so the more noise we make, and that's why we're here, the better it is for the society here in Australia, for the churches, for everything. And listen, this movie transcends just the theaters. It's a movie that can be used for education, for high schools.
Really? Yep.
It can be a movie about prevention, and the truth of abortion.
Yep.
It touches in many different areas.
So that goes back to the second part of a question that was asked about 45 minutes ago, which is what's next. And so what's next would be after theatrical distribution. It's going to be on DVD and SVOD, streaming video on demand, just as quickly as possible.
Great. But Tin Tax, how many distributors, if any, are currently in negotiations? Are we going to see it in cinemas?
Yes, I am very, very hopeful. In fact, we're having a conversation again tomorrow, and we have a person dedicated on our team just for international distribution, and I believe, let's say prophesy, that yes, it will be in Australia. Yeah. It will be in Australia, and I know that it will be in Australia because I'm going to say publicly here that 6 years ago, on May 18th, 2013, God gave me a vision in worship about the nation of Australia. And on May 18th, you all know that this is the date of your national election. It's no coincidence that we are here. We are here because God has his eye on Australia. So don't feel like it's past the date. I mean, like, oh, it's too late to show Unplanned because of the elections. It's not about your elections, but it is in the sense that God had May 18th on his heart 6 years ago when he showed me in a vision revival in Australia. And I didn't even know anybody in Australia, and I thought he was pointing out the wrong country.
Yeah, well, the flat earthers actually think Australia is a conspiracy. We don't actually exist. We're out in the backlots of I don't know, some American desert, maybe.
Australia's where the light starts.
Right.
That's where the sun comes out first.
But, well, that's actually New Zealand, but anyway.
Oh.
They're just part of
We won't
Australia.
go there. We won't go there.
Somebody in Australia actually tried to sell the North and South Islands of New Zealand on eBay.
Bidding wars.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wanted it.
Ooh. I need to talk to him afterwards.
Hey, it's okay to tell jokes about yourself. My dad's Kiwi, I'm half Kiwi, so you know, it's licensed. But I like the ooh, that was probably more satisfying. All the controversy here on Pellowe Talk.
Pillow talk.
No, Pellowe Talk.
Pellowe.
Pellowe. Like hello. Yellow. Anyway, yeah. So, where were we? We were talking about distribution. Are churches going to be able to screen it? People are going to be able to show it in their homes and all that after the cinema is done?
There should be licensing agreements in place.
Yep.
It just comes down to logistics. It makes it very difficult when we're going to individual churches and doing license. You know, it's just we're going to have to come up with a solution that's going to be workable for it. But yes,
sure.
You know, our team is very open to all types of ideas and suggestions on how you want to get this movie into your churches and into your communities and into your schools. Yeah, we're open.
Very good. Question from a teenager. In regards, I haven't read this yet. Maybe I should read it first. No, I'll just read it out loud. It can be a surprise for everybody. Question from a teenager. In regards to using the movie for educational purposes, how can we get it into schools as our state schools are opposed to Christianity? ?
Well,
that was from a teenager. That could have been anything. That was pretty
I would like to say pray. You know, these are obstacles that in the natural look like they are insurmountable. But we know that prayer is our highest weapon. And so if you really, truly believe that your school should have Unplanned in your school for your student population, pray. And lead the way in prayer for those and call upon your friends to pray with you. And see what God will do, because, you know, as here, we don't have those answers. We don't know the dynamics of your school board and your student and the population and the teachers and all of that. But God has a solution for you. No school boards?
No.
Oh.
Just to stake up.
That's where you start. No, I'm just joking.
No, that's so good though. Pray about it, because that's exactly right. I mean, God of the impossible. Does anybody want to admit to being the teenager that asked that question? Yay! Good on you. Good on you for putting your hand up too. Did you write all the questions from that number? Very good. Well, the previous question from, was that Mum, friend? Mum, awesome. Good job. This is a tough one. You ready for another tough one? Okay. With regard to women and young women who have been raped, how do we best respond, counsel and help them? as many choose abortion and see no other way. Actually, not true. 3 out of 4 women who conceive from rape choose to keep their child, love their child. Not most women. I've actually done an interview with, I can't remember her name right now, it'll come to me, but certainly a lady who was violently, very violently assaulted and conceived. And there was never a question for them, that they loved that baby from day one. And in fact, she actually testified that the opportunity to protect that baby gave her some of her strength back, where she felt defenseless and vulnerable and exposed and at risk. She felt strength again because she was given a protector role. And so that was part of her healing, was protecting that baby.
And so to the 1 in 4 who does want to choose abortion, I would just say be as loving with that person as possible and give them the encouragement and the confidence that they can carry this child to term. And if they need to relinquish that child into the loving arms of another mother, that she can do that, that 2 wrongs don't make a right. And you have the opportunity to right the wrong that was done to you by bringing life and cherishing life and giving life to somebody who has been desperately desiring to be that mom or dad.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good one.
Let's just pray. No, wasn't serious. I was just trying to fill the silence. You're just praying.
I was ready.
Yourselves.
I'm always ready for prayer. Are you kidding me?
Gabriel's very,
Thank you,
very
Lord.
spiritual.
More of you.
While you're looking through that, I'll give you a moment to
please do,
find the
Lord.
next question. I want to go back to one of the very first things that was spoken about, and how Gabriel had mentioned that we were called the 5 stones in our ministry team on set. I love how God works to just give us those, I don't know, maybe you will call them God winks or God smiles, but there was one day when we went into this building. It's called the Kicker Building. It's the building that was used to demonstrate the Planned Parenthood headquarters. It's that scenes where Abby is being confronted by Cheryl about the fries versus soda. You know, abortion is our fries and soda. It was that beautiful building. We walked in, it was probably 5:30 in the morning. It was before the sun came up, and we went into the conference room where they were going to have some filming later that day. And on this beautiful conference table, there were 5 smooth stones laid out on the table that were there from the company, and just as decoration. And that's where we were going in to have our morning devotions with our crew. And so it was just like one of those smiles of God, like, yes, you know, he was smiling on us in our prayer time, and that there was just that affirmation in that way.
Did Abby Johnson ever make a visit to the set? And how did that go?
Several, yes. And it was very powerful. She came on set for the first time during the filming of the scene where her counterpart, Ashley Bratcher, is pregnant with the first baby, with Grace. And I remember taking pictures. I was the behind-the-scenes stills photographer as well as being a prayer minister. And I was taking pictures of Abby as she came onto set, and I was honestly just blown away at how radiant she was. I was not expecting to see someone emanating so much joy. And then later she was in the director's tent where they were watching the filming on the screens, and I just saw tears running down her face. And it wasn't necessarily that powerful of a scene. It was just a scene of Abby and Marilisa at the fence, that the two that had formed this friendship, and Abby was watching it, and she was just crying, and she says that's exactly how it happened, and it took her back to that moment of friendship with this woman who was on the other side of the fence.
Wow, so beautiful. Are there any other stories that I mean, I'm sure there's a million. I want to actually talk you through the movie, but I don't want to spoil it for you. Some little insights into the movie.
Part of the
that won't
dynamics
spoil it.
of prayer throughout, I mean, these are 12, 14-hour days, and you're there all day, and you're eating junk food because there's not real good food, and drinking coffee. But something that happened often was the directors are building the scene and they're directing the scene, and we're on take number 8, 10, 12, because they wanted to get it right and it's not working. And so they would call Lorraine or they would call me, stop filming, stop for prayer, pray, and then we saw breakthroughs. Say, Gabriel, come on, this scene is hard, let's stop production, let's pray right now. And we will pray. It happened many times, and then we saw some results. And you have to understand that in order to stop a scene, it's $9,000 to $10,000 an hour. It's not like a couple of pennies. But many times we stopped and prayed. Prayed in the morning, prayed during that, prayed during the lunch, after. So the dynamic of prayer was constant and intentional.
One of my favorite moments of the Holy Spirit showing up on set was in the very beginning. Now, Gabriel and I, we were new to the entertainment industry. This is the first film we worked on, so we had a whole learning experience that we needed to go through, a learning curve. And it was one of the first days of filming, and we were in a Baptist church on the 3rd floor. It was 9 o'clock at night. And Ashley Bratcher, our lead actress, was filming the scene where she comes out of the abortion industry, and it was a very emotional scene. And it was hot up in this room. It's late at night, and it was tense. The room was tense, and we were outside in an RV that our friends had brought onto the film set that housed our ministry. And the 5 of us were just praying in the RV, and I really felt the impression of the Holy Spirit to get up and to go into that upper room and just be there. And I didn't know why. And I also felt there was some resistance to me going up from other people, like, no, you don't belong there, you're not supposed to be there. But I just felt like I needed to go. And I went upstairs, and I tried to be as inconspicuous as possible. So I put myself up in a little corner next to the wall, and I could see that there was tension. I could see that things were not happening well. I could see that it just wasn't clicking. And so the director yelled, cut, and I turned my back as Ashley got up and left the area, because I didn't even want her to see me, because we were told, don't ever make eye contact with an actor while they're filming their scenes, because you're going to take them out of the moment. You don't want them to even notice you. In fact, even your clothing had to be very inconspicuous. You couldn't wear bright colors or patterns. You had to just be as drab as possible. Wow. So the director yelled cut. I turned my back so Ashley wouldn't see me. She walked past me, and she walked into the hallway, and she got on her phone, and she texted me. She says, Lorraine, are you here? I need someone to pray with me. And so I brought up the rest of the people from our 5 stones, and we gathered around Ashley and prayed. And then she told us why she needed our prayers. She said in her trailer that morning, she was praying over the scene, and the Holy Spirit gave her a vision of heaven. And in heaven, she saw thousands and thousands of perfect souls the world had never met. And these children came up and came around her, embracing her. And she felt the love of the Father over her. And she wanted to take that emotion into the scene, and it just wasn't happening. She wasn't connecting. And we prayed with her, and after that, she walked in, and she did the scene. And in fact, she did it so well that the directors chose to use her verbal language. It was supposed to be a voiceover. You hear a lot of voiceovers in the movie where she's describing what's happening. And that was supposed to be just a voiceover scene, but instead she acted it so well, and the way that she portrayed that so well, that they used her ad-libbing, so to speak, instead of the voiceover.
What scene was that?
That was when she was, when Sean says, so you've had a rough day? A rough day at the office? And so she's describing just what had happened.
She was really broken in that scene.
She was really broken, yes. Many times. I mean, Ashley, not poor Ashley, God gave her grace for it, but she gave her all. I mean, everything that she had in those moments.
Yeah. No, that was absolutely beautiful. Let's bring this home, wrap it up. What would be your encouragement, I guess? How do you want to encourage us as we close off?
Be strong and courageous, the Lord is with you. Don't let fear of man hinder you from speaking out truth. Don't let fear of man hinder you from sharing with your neighbor about this film. Don't let fear of man stop you from speaking out in your congregation. Don't let fear of man stop you from saying, I'm going to offend my neighbor if I tell him about this abortion movie. Don't let fear of man make your decisions for you. Be more mindful of the things of God than you are of man, and let the Lord work on your behalf, and he will open the doors for you to have those opportunities to share and to make a culture change here in Australia.
Great, thank you. Gabriel?
Just want to encourage everybody that this is something that is a worldwide issue, and we're all part of it, and we are part of the solution. And so your compassion and your love for life needs to transcend just your family. Go to your communities, your schools, places of work. There are men and women hurting even right now. Because we can celebrate life, the sanctity of life today, but tomorrow there are thousands of babies that are going to be exterminated. So let's be a voice and be bold and move with the Lord in order to have that compassion that Jesus has. That Jesus puts his arm around you and said, there is no condemnation in me. I love you. And that is the same love that we need to show to those that are going through a tough time. Pray for protection. Pray for revelation. Pray that God will open up opportunities for you to minister to those that are hurting. We don't want people to live in a hospital and be sick forever. We want to heal them. Jesus wants to heal their heart.
Yeah.
That's my encouragement.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. Let's thank our guests. So, abortion is here, it is amongst us, and we need to understand it, we need to know the truth about it, and we need to shine a light on the topic. We need to have conversations about this. Essentially, I see abortion as treating a living person as disposable property, and I don't think that's any different to slavery. And Christians were instrumental in ending slavery generations ago. Today, there is no such thing as a pro-slavery candidate in any election. And that's what we need to be looking for, is the end of pro-abortion candidates. We need to give our political supply and strength to pro-life candidates. This is just the most important justice issue of our generation. And we need to not be dismayed if it doesn't happen in one election cycle. We need to absolutely persist and continue to prophesy and expect a good outcome, and make sure that every ounce of strength that we have available goes into changing our culture, into bringing God's kingdom in here. When Jesus taught us to pray, he said, pray this way, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And that's what I want to see in our government, is God's will to be done. And it is not God's will for innocent human lives to be treated and disregarded as disposable property. So